My vote rocks. My vote rocks. My vote rocks.
Hello everyone and welcome to My Vote Rocks, where today we're going to be discussing brain drain. The number of people who are going abroad to study, perhaps to stay abroad. Should they do that? Should they actually study right here in India? Should they come back to India and work out here? What do young people think about it? And of course, as always, we're going to see how all of this ties up with the elections and voting and politicians, and whether they should be spending a lot more time and energy and enthusiasm on education or not. But first of all, thank you all so much for being here. All of you college students, I believe, how many of you enjoy studying in India? Raise your green flag if you enjoy it, red if you don't. Wow, all of you enjoy studying here in India. One person doesn't. One sad person in an entire room who says he hates studying in India. Why?
The amount of opportunities abroad are much better and much more advanced than here. And you have a chance to have a better livelihood abroad. Is that what I feel?
Okay, there are others disagree with that. I'm going to keep on coming on this theme.
Well, I think that the Indian education system is really good. The amount of knowledge they give us is the most that we get in all over the world. So maybe that's why I think it's a...
Okay, you know, I'm going to keep on. There's lots to discuss here, and this is going to be the theme throughout the thing. So why don't I just start off by welcoming our very special guests we have, and also tell you what the opinion poll thinks about some of these issues, and then we're going to get into every aspect of this. So we have a great panel today. Gives me great pleasure to welcome, put your hands together, joining us from Mumbai, Chetan Bhagat, author and columnist. Chetan, wonderful to have you with us. And we have with us, sitting right here next to me, Anna Vetikat, great to have you with us, writer, journalist. We have with us Dr. Anupam Sibal there, who's Group Medical Director at the Apollo Hospitals, looking after pediatric gastroenterologist, somebody who went, studied abroad, and then did come back. And great pleasure to welcome Gilles out here, who, put your hands together, he's a choreographer who came out here from France as a student. Is that correct?
Sorry?
You came here from France as
Yes.
a student, you did your PhD out
Yes.
here and then stayed on.
Yeah.
So you picked the Indian education system over the French system and then have stayed on here ever since?
Yes, something like that.
Okay, great. So we'll be getting some of those details and the stories from you. And in just a short while from now, Shashi Tharoor is going to be joining us, Minister of State for HRD. So all your complaints, get them all together. We'll throw them all to him in one big spell swoop. Okay, let's just start off with the first big question that we are asking out here. Whether let's set aside coming back and working here and where you should spend your life. We'll do that in the second segment. First of all, studying abroad as opposed to studying here. What's your take? Which is better?
Well, I think that, our educational institutions don't market themselves as well as they should. It's not that we don't have flaws. Obviously, there are flaws in our education system, but there also obviously is something that we're doing right. That our kids who have gone to our schools and our undergrad courses are then going abroad and doing so well. Obviously, we're doing something right. But, I was reading that the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, one reason why there has been an increase in the number of Indian universities included is that this year the Ministry of HRD...
There are only 5 of them.
Yeah, but this year the
5.
Ministry of HRD apparently had a meeting with the guys who put the list together. Now, if that meeting is required for us to be to have more of our universities included, then maybe we are not putting enough emphasis on marketing ourselves abroad. And, marketing and lobbying are dirty words in our country, unfortunately. So, of course, the emphasis on excellence, the amount of time and money one gets for research at universities abroad, great thing. But the emphasis on hard work and just that whole beaver-like attitude that we Indians have, that also is an amazing thing.
And which comes from our education system. Okay.
Which we're not selling abroad.
Which we're not selling. Chetan Bhagat, let me get you in.
I am a pretty patriotic and optimist of a person, and I think I was lucky enough to go to good schools here. So they are as good as, and I always used to believe the Indian schools are better. But lately, when I'm seeing the median, for the median youth, I'm not comparing the top colleges because it's not just Indian abroad. It's about A grade versus A grade abroad or B grade versus B grade abroad. I find the median, unfortunately, you'll have better opportunities and better courses abroad. Unfortunately, that is the case today for the average person. Our education system just hasn't reformed fast enough. So if you can go abroad, I think it's better. The only downside, it's very expensive. So that's more to do with our
if you
currency
can do
and
it,
all,
but it's very expensive, and that's a theme. Again, I'm going to come to you. Let me get you in. You did the reverse, and from what I hear, you didn't have a particularly good experience in your PhD here either. But
Just the beginning. The thing is that I came to India because I was doing a PhD on India, so I had to do a field work. So I mean, there was no other choice. I mean, I wanted to come to India because my PhD was about the caste system and how Brahmins were looking at politics and all the. I was in the middle of the Mandal Commission, so the PhD was about how Brahmins looked at all this entire political upheaval. Yeah, the beginning was a bit, actually my guide told me your PhD topic is not political science for us. It's too, I was doing something like more like a cultural context of politics. And in India, political science is much more strict and much more, so I don't know how I can help you. So then I went to other colleges, I went to meet people at Delhi School of Economics, I went to JNU, so at the end of the day it was fine, but the beginning it was a bit, yes, a bit difficult.
and that's part of the thing which I think will come to the rigidity that sometimes exists in the Indian education system. Some people think it's a great thing because everyone learns a certain amount of things. Others say it is too rigid. Anupam, let me get you an early thought.
I think the schooling is very good. It's really competitive. There's a lot of discipline. Perhaps we overdo the exam bit, and of course, in recent times we've seen some reforms. But when we talk about university education, let's look back at the last 50 years. Have we been able to meet the need of today's youth? How many colleges do we have now? Vikram, you and I both went to Delhi University. How many seats have increased in those colleges that everybody wants to get into? So quite often people don't want to leave. They want to get into a handful of colleges which they believe impart excellent education, but they just aren't enough. So quite often it's because of a compulsion. And I think we can reform, we need to reform, we need to be a little more flexible as universities abroad are, and that is the reason why, as you said, only 5 in the top 100, and that's because we are so rigid.
So sometimes people want to go abroad and study abroad just because they cannot get into good universities out here. That's a very relevant point. Okay, I want to come back and get some views from all of you, but let me just start by throwing up some of the results of the big opinion poll we've done. And just remember, this is the urban youth poll done by Hansa Research, more than 4,000, 5,000 people, urban youth. We did go and ask them this question. First of all, the question, do you want to study abroad? Do you want to study abroad? And actually, the results of this, quite interesting, at least to me, because this is what the results threw up. Only 34% said we want to study abroad. 52% said we have no desire to study abroad. 14% were undecided, but more than half said we don't want to study abroad. Among the people who said they did want to study abroad, there was a gender difference between men and women, but not as much as you might think. So it was still 36-31, roughly is the way it is. Now, we asked them the question, or those who said they did want to study abroad, we asked them why do you want to study abroad? And this is what they said. 48% said, for the gentleman there was saying, better job prospects. 32% said better quality of education, and 5% said a better campus life. And somewhat interestingly and somewhat related to all of this, we did ask them a question that at the end of the day, which do you think is better? Now forget about campus life and all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, which is better? An Indian degree or a foreign diploma? What would you choose between the two? Here were the results were. 56% said an Indian degree is better. 24% said a foreign diploma is better. Alright, so that's what this poll threw up, and it seems to be, from what I remember from the flags, roughly what all of you out here in this room also think. So let me come around, and all those who feel better to study in India, raise your flags again. Let me come to some of you and see why you feel that way. Starting with you.
Indian education system prepares you well for the challenges you face in your future life. I mean, many of us sitting here are the budding entrepreneurs. So whatever competition you face during in the industry itself when you open your own venture, the Indian education system makes you ready for that. And on this point, I rate Indian education system very high.
Okay, let me get one more view, and then Shashi Tharoor is joining us. I'm just going to go across to him, but I'll get one more view before I do.
When we look at Indians from the global perspective, Indians are the go-getters of the world. They are the leaders of the Jugaad innovation of the world. So basically what this mindset comes from where this mindset comes from is the Indian education system.
So the Indian education system teaches you Jugaad. You want to elaborate on that?
Well, basically you are...
Photocopying notes instead of buying books.
No, it's not, that is not Jugaad. The Jugaad is... you have got a deadline, somehow you have got to meet that. You have got an exam, you have to compete with 10,000 other students, you have to do it because there are limited opportunities and you as an individual want to excel in that.
Okay, so interesting. Okay, a contrary view I think coming from there.
Okay, I totally disagree with this thing, that Indian system tells you Jugaad thing. Now, Jugaad are done by those people who are not serious about the things. Now, when teachers gives you an assignment, right, you can do that in 2 days. But what happens is that you do not complete in the first day. Second day, you rush for this thing. And then you call that you have completed in just few hours.
So doing Jugaad is not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes you're doing Jugaad because you haven't done it the right way. Shashi Tharoor joining us now. Shashi, some good news, I think, from your point of view, that when the urban youth poll that we've done shows more than 50% of people saying that given a choice, they would not want to go abroad, they'd want to study in India. Flaws and no flaws. How would you react to that a majority of people saying they would prefer to study in India as opposed to going and studying abroad?
Oh, I think that's absolutely correct. I think it's apart from a very small percentage of students, many who go abroad are those who don't get into the kinds of colleges and courses that they want to get into here. That famous story of Mr. Narayanmurthy's son who couldn't get into the IIT and went to Harvard instead. That kind of story, including the students who go to Australia, to New Zealand, to Canada and so on, are very often students who couldn't get into the institutions of their choice in India. So I would agree with you, most of us want to study here and most of our young people still want to study here. And indeed many who go abroad and study usually want to come back here.
Okay, interesting point you made there. Sometimes it's tough to get into good colleges here in India, and that actually is a very major factor. Another thing which is perhaps a factor that should be considered is the cost of it. I don't know how much you guys are paying for your education right now in colleges here in India, but I can tell you it is really reasonable. And for this, we ask people this question: who pays for your education? Who's paying for your education out here? Here were the results of the Urban Youth Poll. 79% said my parents do. Which is fine, okay. 12% said that they work to pay, and 6% said partially by both. So 80% of people, give or take, are saying that their parents are paying for it. And I can tell you, your parents will find it far easier in India than abroad. And that's perhaps the reason why, when we ask people the question, is funding your education a hassle? 41% said it's not too much trouble at all, and that's given the fees out here. 56% though did say it is plenty of trouble, and I guess that will become much worse if it's a question of going and studying abroad. So that question links up with it. Okay, cost of education. Who has a view on this? How many people feel that, how many of you in this room feel that the amount that you are paying for education in India is very low? I mean, be fair about this. I'm sure you want it to be zero. You don't think it's very low. Why don't you think it's very low? Then I'll go to the majority.
If we see the private colleges and the private schools that we have to go to because of lack of opportunity and because of the reservation system that is very prevalent in our country, it is very tough for normal people to get into, or the guys who are not brilliant or don't have a IQ of 130 plus. For them, the education
they have to go to private colleges, and
it is at par with the foreign universities.
Okay, so if you're going to private because you can't get into the others, then you have to pay a lot more.
I just want to say that it's an excuse. If you're not getting into a good college, it is because of you. We cannot blame education system for this. If you are excellent, obviously you will get a seat. So, and if we talk about the fees, government colleges are the fees is very low. We can study there, and if going abroad, it's not just the fees, but staying there, spending your money on things, and obviously we go around and it's really high.
Shashi, why don't I start with you? The view essentially being expressed out here is that, yeah, it's fine to say that education in India is reasonable, but that's true if you're getting into a Delhi university or getting into some government colleges. Otherwise, if you're paying to get into private colleges, given how tough it is to actually get admission, you could be ending up forking out a lot of money.
Exactly. Our college education at the government establishments, the central as well as state universities, is incredibly reasonable. In fact, reasonable is too euphemistic a word. It's actually inexpensive. Even the IITs offer a standard of technical education at a fee that would be laughable anywhere else in the world. But once you get to the private institutions, there are two problems. The fees are much higher, but many private institutions are actually breaking the law by demanding capitation fees and under-the-table payments of various sorts, which we are trying to actually make punishable as a criminal offense, but which many students at the moment and their families have no choice but to do in order to get into a private institution. And so we are really very troubled by that aspect. And once you take that into account, our private education in many places in India becomes unaffordable.
Chetan, Bhagat, let me get you in.
Well, it is It is cheap for very few people. I mean, it's almost like a lottery ticket mixed with if you are incredibly smart, and if you have a lottery ticket, then you will get into one of these colleges. But that's not how you view an entire country's education. I think at one level we have all these strange regulations and diktats even from the Supreme Court that there can't be any profits in private sector. So all these private sector institutes who charge a lot of fees technically are not supposed to make profits, but they're all stealing profits out. I would rather they legitimately allow profits and allow competition to kick in and have universities, or the government expands. Neither the government is expanding, nor are they making regulations that let the private sector expand, nor are they facilitating a cheap exchange rate or anything to let people study abroad. So unfortunately, it is a big problem. I mean, we still, some people may be very happy staying in India, and that's lovely because they love their country and their loved ones. But fact is, I have seen people who speak perfect English becoming waiters, getting paid very less, graduates who have very low paying jobs in India today, and that to me at least is a worrying scenario. It may be a fun life, but at the end of the day that is not a career, that is not people being brought up to their potential, and it's high time we recognize that problem. And once we do, then we can do something about it. Otherwise everybody will prefer to go abroad if they can afford it. I mean, it's a fact. If you are getting into a NIT Agartala, for example, which is a good college, and say compare it to a Purdue University at the same price, where do you think the kid is going to go? I mean, let's not kid ourselves here.
Okay, Anna?
I think firstly that our schools should be having better career counseling, because youngsters are still thinking too much in traditional terms. We're still teaching our students to feel that if you're brilliant, then X is the kind of career brilliant students go into, and if you're not so brilliant, and then the less brilliant. The second thing is, I think we have to teach our kids to be more adventurous. Does everybody have to do a BA or a BCom? Some of the pressure on our colleges is because everyone is made to feel that if you don't do, if you're not a graduate, you're useless. But sometimes the profession that you've chosen for yourself might not require that degree from you. So we need to teach our, and you know, you cannot, I mean, how much more, Dr. Tharoor is right, how much cheaper can government funded education be?
I mean, I don't think it can become cheaper in this.
Exactly. So we have to encourage our children to think in terms more adventurously in terms of their career choices.
Can I just throw your point to Dr. Tharoor? I mean, Shashi, I think the point that she's making is absolutely bang on. A lot of people have been talking about this, that why does everybody have to try and go and get a degree? If we could have a proper system where vocational education, for example, is not considered inferior to a degree, it will take the pressure off the colleges and may help a lot.
I agree entirely with Anna and with you in that question, because the fact is that we are heading in that direction. We're now trying to create community colleges throughout the country as kind of a halfway house option. You come out of high school, you can't get into a university, you get into a community college instead, and you do courses with a very heavy concentration of vocational training courses, plus some academic courses. If you just mess things up in high school and really are an academically inclined person, you do well in the academic courses, you could try and get back into a university life. But the vast majority of community college people will leave with a professional diploma, a technical diploma in some sort of vocation, and will go ahead and then do that.
Anupam?
You know, I think over the years, the government universities have done a fine job by allowing people students from families with limited means to get access to excellent education. Now, if you look at your study, about a good 30-40% still feel that money is an issue. So where lies in the solution? The solution lies in the government to invest more in building capacity. Now, you go to Delhi University, what is the problem there? The problem is the classroom size. These campuses are pretty large. Why do they have to be 2 stories? Why can't we make them 4 stories, get in more teachers? You'll have no shortage of teachers wanting to teach in these excellent colleges, build capacity.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to take a break right now, and I want to come back to you, and when we come back after this break, let's return to the other question of brain drain itself. It used to be once considered a massive problem in this country. All our brightest and best people are going abroad, and that's really disastrous for the country. Well, there's now a flip side to that. There is $71 billion of remittance coming back in, which mitigates that to a large extent. But is it in general a good idea to live abroad and work abroad, or is it much better to come back home out here? So we'll turn our attention to that when we return after this break.
My word drops. My word drops.
Welcome back. We are doing a special program on My Vote Rocks on the entire question of brain drain. Should people go and study abroad? Well, the majority of people actually in this opinion poll said they don't really want to go and study abroad. But the broader question, even if you do want to go and study abroad, should you return home? Eventually, is India the best place to live the rest of your life? Before I come to all the guests and the results of this, let me do some quick polling from all of you out here. How many of you think that eventually you would like to come back to India and spend your life here? Put up your green flags. Okay, let me get the divergence out here. You do want to spend your life in India, you don't. So why?
Yes, I feel that in India we are around with our parents, our family members, all of them stay here. So we'll get a better environment here. Fine, the living conditions are better outside, but the love and affection you get, that is what matters more.
Okay, you pick the living conditions over the love and affection?
Yes, I definitely pick up the living conditions over the love and affection. Is the paycheck, definitely. The paycheck.
Can I ask you, have you ever done it in purchasing power parity? Your paycheck actually may go a lot further here than it does there.
But definitely the packages offered outside are better than what we are offered in India.
Okay, let me get some other views and then I want to come to our guests. So, somebody who hasn't spoken yet, this side.
But I feel that, going out abroad also helps us in getting more recognition for our country. People from our country are making, name for all of us.
Okay, fair enough. So, it does help the country in the long term.
I would like to say that we should go abroad because our career enhancement is there abroad because of the technical facilities over there which India lacks.
But why don't you sit and build the technical facilities here? Thought of that? Okay.
I want to say that if I get an opportunity to work abroad, I wouldn't return to India because abroad offers me more resources in terms of financial resources, personality development, and it's a kind of an easier job there because...
But same question, why don't you think of studying abroad, doing abroad and come back here and try and fix things?
I want to
How about voting, for example?
I want to study in India but work abroad. I want to study in India because it's a quality education system.
So the Indian government should pay for your education, then you'll go and work abroad. Isn't that unfair?
No, we are paying for the education of India.
Okay, fine. Let me ask somebody who had a completely different take. You did it the other way around. You came here and you now spent 20 years of your life in India, which is wonderful. Is it a decision you've ever regretted, and why did you take that decision?
No, I've never regretted that. Yeah, to take...
And we are very happy to have you here. Put your hands together for me.
To take from what people say is exactly that. For me, the priority was human comfort versus material comfort. But of course, I don't have a family here. But I think in India, I always tell my friends, Indian friends, you want to go abroad, you go for 1 year, and then after 1 year you come back and we'll talk about it. Because it's this entire image of the West and the entire thing about, yes, there's technically it's more advanced than this. There's also at the human level, I feel India has a lot to offer. Even for me, I came from France, I didn't know anyone. I feel at home. I feel a great sense of belonging, there's a great sense of joy. When I go to the West, I feel a lot of people are very grey, people are a lot into their head. Here, people are more into their heart, they're more in touch with their body, they're more in touch with their life. So for me, as an artist, it makes sense to be here, and it makes sense to be in a country where I can do many, many things. I can, in the West, everything is so organized. If you're a dancer choreographer, you have to be in a company-sponsored, in a government-sponsored company. And here, I can do many, many things. I work with children, I work with fashion, I work with films, I work with theater. There's much more flexibility here. So it's a personal choice. I don't know if an engineer coming from France will have the same experience coming here. But as an artist, the flexibility, the joy, the color, the celebration that I find here it's what I want to experience.
Okay, I think that's put really, really eloquently. Let me get everyone else in on this as well. So Shashi, your thoughts, even if you're studying abroad, come back home. I know you, for example, would have had the choice of spending your life abroad, as did many people here. You chose to come back here very, very clearly. What would you say on this?
Some aspects of material life in the West in particular, when we say abroad, I think we all mean the West in this conversation, are more attractive if you're buying internationally priced goods. If you're buying iPads and so on, you're looking at a smaller portion of your disposable income goes to those items there than they would here. But there are lots and lots of other conveniences that make the quality of life, ranging from the proximity of family to the availability of domestic help. So in many ways, people are better off in India, even in terms of standards of living, because they can get the kinds of help that they would not be able to get in the West. Having said this, there's a larger point to be made here. which is that yes, people go abroad attracted, as somebody said, by better facilities, but in fact in India those facilities are now coming on stream. IBM, GE and Philips have more researchers in India than in their parent countries. And what is more, many Indians who have done advanced technical and scientific studies abroad are returning to India. The days when a Hargobind Khurana or a Subramaniam Chandrasekhar felt they had to stay abroad to pursue their intellectual work because they couldn't do so in India, those days are over. Now everything is available in India and people can come back and do cutting-edge work here if they want to be in their home country.
Chetan, Bhagat, let me get you in.
It's becoming clear that there is no one right answer, but I mean it's not just material comforts that one would live abroad for. For example, there are other things. It's a much safer place for women, for example, or for kids, or it's a society that is not corrupt, or it's a society that is not as divided. And you know, it is a great worldview to go there and live there for a few years. You know, things are still new here, so there is scope to grow. It's not a very pro-business environment, whereas in other places maybe they are more pro-business, more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
But here you have many things starting up for the first time. So I would tell youngsters here, listen, don't be so rigid-minded, don't be so, parochial. If you get a chance, try everything in life and then settle down later. Who wants you to, I mean, they may have asked you a question in the survey now, but why do you have to decide for sure so early?
Okay, so try it out and then come back.
Floater.
So, Anupam,
Yeah.
on the point of change, and I think that's a really important point also that is coming out. Now the opportunities are increasing. Do you see, is that something which influenced you to make up your mind?
Well, I think for me it was relatively simple, Vikram. When I was training in England, we used to see children with liver failure come in for a liver transplant. And these were children from very affluent homes who could spend 60 lakhs, 70 lakhs, 80 lakhs. They had to wait for months. It was agonizing. And that's when the thought came, hey, why should somebody from India have to travel? Why can't we set up a liver transplant program in India to help our people, to help people from other countries? And that's how I came back. Luckily for me, it worked out. We could put together a team. In fact, last year we became the busiest solid organ transplant program in the world. So it was a great decision. But it was a hard decision at that point in time because we're taking a huge risk. You could actually be a part of a well-oiled machinery, have a very cushy life, do a lot of research, a lot of academics, make good money. But we decided to take the plunge because we thought we can make a difference. And today things are very different because you don't have to take so much of a risk as Dr. Tharoor said or Chetan said. India is very different to the time that Vikram, you and I came back. The opportunities here are phenomenal, and I think as Dr. Tharoor was saying, there's so much research happening as well. Of course, a lot more can happen. So I think the time
and
is
the
very
competition is also going up, so life always continues to move. You have a lot more opportunity, lots more competition. So, and just to get you in on that, so part of what he said, what I was asking a couple of people out there also, is there a moral duty to say I have to pay back to society, I should be out here with family, with the society, with the country, and there's a moral duty almost to be back here?
I don't think we should impose a moral duty on people, but we should help people understand that youngsters should be encouraged to do a cost-benefit analysis. When you talk about family being here, it is not just the fact that you have your emotional anchors here. When you go abroad, you go to any other country, you're setting up a new home, you're spending a huge amount of your income. You know, the medical facilities abroad, medicine, going to a hospital, going to a doctor is so much cheaper over here. It is definitely socially easier for you to be an old person in India than it is to be abroad. And too often, I think people who go to the West are making choices slightly mindlessly. Not everybody. I'm assuming that for a doctor, an engineer, a researcher, things might be a little frustrating here. But Vikram, you're a journalist, I'm a journalist. Do we just assume that life is better for us if we were to go abroad and be journalists? You know, the Fareed Zakarias of the world are exceptions.
No, I know. I don't assume. I know that life is easier here than it is abroad.
Yeah,
so
because
that's
briefly as a young journalist, Vikram, I had done some research on whether I should look for jobs abroad, and I realized, I don't want to be this Indian girl doing the marginal stories and or this person who needs to pretend to have a foreign accent to appear on air. That is one thing. And the second thing is, personally, as a woman, I want to be in India because on the one hand, there are major safety issues, but on the other hand, you know, this is not Saudi Arabia, it's not Afghanistan. I do not feel so restricted that I feel I cannot be a vocal part of the change that I would like to see for women here.
Bring the change and influence it. Okay. Let me just come to now the results of this poll, and then we're going to head to another section and also ask how everyone here can start making a difference in this. So this is what the result of the poll is, this is what all the people out there in the urban youth poll felt. Would you like to return home after studying abroad, assuming you're being abroad? 78% said yes. 15% said no. 7% were undecided. So an overwhelming majority said that yes, they would like to return home. And in some of the bigger cities, actually it was more than that. In Mumbai, 92% said they want to come back home, even if they go and study abroad. Mumbai, 92%, Chennai, 91%, Kolkata, 81%, Delhi, 71%. So an overwhelming number of people on the opinion poll very clearly saying they want to come back. Now we had this question out on the second screen as well on the NDTV app. Slightly different numbers, so online people obviously not completely feeling the same way as this slightly more scientific opinion poll threw up. But anyway, there you are. So that's what people actually are feeling. Can I just now ask all of you, as we head for the next section, the question of whether you think you can personally make a difference. One of the simplest and the most obvious ways to do it is to actually go out and vote. How many of you are intending to vote in the next election? I'm looking for hands that are not up and ask you why not. So all of you are intending to vote? So okay, that's one way of making a difference. Shashi, something to think about as we head in for the break, and I'm going to come back and ask you after that. To what extent should voting patterns, especially for the youth, be dictated or directed by what parties and others are saying in the field of education? That's something for you to think about. I'll ask you that question when we come back after this break.
My word drops.
Welcome back to My Vote Drops. We're taking a look at brain drain. So, Shashi, Tharoor, let me throw that question to you which we were discussing just before the break. 78% of people on the poll said they do want to come back home after studying abroad. But I was asking a lot of young people out here whether they would, in their voting decision, which is one way in which they can make a difference, will education and what governments and candidates are promising on education, will that be a factor? Do you think that's something that we don't give enough attention to? I mean, we would very rarely will hear any political party ever saying, this is what we intend to do on education.
That's right. It's never been a serious issue of political contention, and that may be a good thing. Every party in our country is committed to more and better quality of education. The question is what that boils down to in practice. See, we in the UPA feel that we've taken GDP expenditure on education from 3.6% in 2004 to 4.8% of a larger GDP today, and we are firmly committed to the target of 6% of GDP. We want to put more money into research and innovation. We've had 11 bills for higher education pending in Parliament, including one that would create 14 new universities for research and innovation. We have a very clear vision of where we want to take the country in education. So if education is a major determining factor in people's votes, we hope they'll support us. But having said that, let's keep education above politics. To my mind, it will be dangerous if each political party tries to use education to advance its own political agenda. And finally, since you also talked about people coming back, I've taken the plunge to come back. I've taken the plunge to try and make a difference by getting involved in public life and politics in our country. And I hope that more young people who may now be abroad or about to go abroad will think of coming back, bringing their ideas and energy and their savings and engaging themselves in the process of transforming India into a country that their children will never want to leave.
All right, Dr. Tharoor, fantastic to have you with us on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Chetan, Bhagat, let me get some final thoughts from you, touching upon this theme also as to whether in elections, in voting, is this something which should be higher on the agenda of this country, education in general?
Well, education is indirectly been there. I mean, the whole policy of reservation is to do with politics, whether we like it or not, and it's an issue that has been debated for years, and that's not what we are discussing. But, politically, the youth is not yet a vote bank. In fact, that is why the youth issue, especially the urban youth issues, the kind of sample you are surveying is not really represented. No, you'll not find too many politicians directly alluding to them. It is becoming a cohesive mass because of the social media. There is at least a few million of these voters who could vote one way or the other if a great education policy announced or otherwise. So I think that's something for politicians to take note of. We have to realize the one thing, politics is about inclusiveness, and education, good education can be sometimes about excellence, which can be about exclusion, which can be about selecting the best, making the best university and having only the best of the best a chance to study there, and that doesn't fit very well with politics. Politics wants to please everybody, and that's, you know, sometimes a big issue, that you gotta let places of excellence be very autonomous and be away from politics, and only then they thrive. And we've seen in India the best institutes are those where the political interference is the minimum.
Okay, Chetan, Bhagat, thank you as well so much for having joined us on the show. Thank you so much, and to Dr. Tharoor. You know, I want to throw to all of you an interesting point that Chetan made. The youth is never seen as a vote bank, which is why the issues that affect the youth are never squarely on the... Now, you know, if you look at the elections that are happening now in Delhi, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and other states and Chhattisgarh, and when you look at the general elections, do you think it's actually an interesting statistic, the number of young first-time voters? You may well shape the future of which way the government is going to go. How many of you think that in some way the youth should find a way to put your agendas more squarely on the table?
I think talking about the political agenda, reservation has always been, you know, in the agenda of the political parties. But instead of reducing reservation through the years, they are increasing, and that's vote bank politics. So I would definitely vote for a party and you know, be influenced by it if someone has the guts to say that I'm reducing the reservation. So because reservation is one of the main causes of brain drain today.
Okay, any other issues that you think are going to influence your vote when it comes to education or other things?
A little earlier in the discussion, you had asked us one thing that you told about a poll which said 78% of the people think the parents pay for their education, 15% people think they pay for their education, and the others think it's a combination. Well, I think they're wrong. They're all wrong. I'm sorry, but you're all wrong. I think neither does the government pay for your education. Who pays for your education is the taxpayers' money. The entire country is funding your education. The entire country is trying to make a future out of all of us. And if asked this question, that when you go out abroad and whether do you want to come back, do you owe to the country? Yes, you owe to the country. You owe to all of the countrymen out here who are paying for your education. So that's how, you know.
That's eloquently and well put. Let me get some other viewpoints. The gentleman out there.
The two things, the proper education system, its effectiveness, we need to address. Second thing is the growth and career opportunity, which they should look and then they come to India. So we will vote to that party, especially which is not inclined towards vote bank politics and all, which will, rather than it will be more concerned about the education of our, you know, more making it more effective. First thing. Second thing, which is more looking towards bringing companies in, providing valuable growth and employment opportunities for the youth. So I'm personally going to vote for that party, which is.
Okay, how many? Can I ask you? We're almost far out of time. How many of you in this room agree with what he said, that you will vote for a party which is going to be which is going to be generating education, employment, growth? That's going to be your one criteria. Okay, wow. I'm going to just leave one last statistic with you from the Urban Youth Poll. Government versus private jobs. Any thoughts? Anna, which one do you think they'd pick? Government jobs or private jobs?
The audience over here?
No, the opinion poll that we've done.
Private jobs?
Private jobs.
Private, I think.
Private jobs?
Private jobs.
That's what you all think? Well, interestingly, all of you are wrong. When we ask people this question, which would you prefer, a government job or a private job? 65% said a secure government job. 27% said a high-paying private job. That's an interesting result. How many agree with that here? Okay, lots of people out here agree with that also. Well, some people here disagree, but there's a large number of people here agree with that. So government jobs, hey, here you have it. Government jobs still obviously really popular. So I'm going to leave that to you to think about. And one final thought to leave all of you to think about, as the people had said out here, if you really want to make a difference out here and you are complaining about what's wrong here in India and why you may have to go abroad, do remember to vote, because that's essentially where the change is going to come to. And we're going to end the show by handing it over to Jani, who's only 20 years old and is going to be singing for us about some of the changes I think that she'd like to see.
There is a twinkle of your eyes in my heart. The sun it rises in my head as you walk. I walk ahead of you and clear the streets. I don't want the world to ever get the peak. We beat our laughter kids in the race to this light. The sun it rises slowly in my head behind. I've changed my name to Hey You. When you spoke over the crowd were calling me. We may fight, you may break some plates. We may lie, but I'll never say. Seemed like a lake, but now we set sail. It's a long and tiring